Since I was a child, I have been a firm believer in the existence of God. I rarely talk about this experience to others. This experience of mine was the best gift God ever gave me. I felt like I left my body and entered a realm beyond reality. It was not simply a dream or a hallucination, because I was clearly aware of my existence. When this experience occurred, I felt a special connection with God. I was able to perceive the presence and infinite love of God. 20 years after the near-death experience, I also saw scenes from Judgment Day. I have suffered from asthma since I was very young. When I was 11 years old, my mother left this world because of cancer. The news was a huge shock to me and I felt very sad. Shortly after my mother's death, I felt very helpless and lost. However, during that difficult time, something incredible happened. One night, I was lying in bed. Suddenly, I felt a strange phenomenon, and my body gradually fell into a state of complete paralysis. This experience was very scary and frightening for me. I struggled and tried to move my body. No matter how hard I tried to move, my body felt like it was completely out of control. At the same time, I found myself unable to make any sound. In the process, my breathing began to become difficult and the symptoms of an asthma attack began to appear. It felt like there was an invisible pressure pressing against my chest cavity. I felt like I was in a state where I had no control over my body and my breathing was restricted. My soul was leaving my body. All my pain was gone. A spinning tunnel appeared in front of my eyes. This tunnel seemed very long. When I entered the tunnel, I noticed that there were many tiny balls of light around me. I was curious about these balls of light, which looked like the souls of other people. These spheres of light emitted a soft glow, and they passed quickly around me, as if each one knew exactly where it was going. It was as if there was some special connection between me and these balls of light. This made me no longer feel alone. As I turned my attention forward, a dazzling light flashed in front of my eyes. This light emitted a warm energy. I could vaguely see a huge square building. Many souls passed quickly by me, all moving toward that square building. I understood that that was our destination. I felt a gravitational force that drew me deeply forward. As I entered into the light, a beautiful scene unfolded before me. A meadow full of flowers. Each flower bloomed with brilliant colors and gave off an enchanting fragrance. The building emitted a great light. There was not a single shadow as far as I could see, everything was so bright. It was as if the light could penetrate everything. I was immersed in this beautiful sight, admiring every detail. I knew that I had come to a pure world, the home of our souls. Here, there is no pain or worry, only endless love and peace. I felt my soul was liberated and reborn, merging with this wonderful existence. Curiously, I walked toward the square building. It seemed to be suspended in mid-air and exuded an aura of mystery. As I got closer to it, I was amazed to find that it was studded with many huge gems at its base. These gems were of various colors. Each gemstone was so huge that they shone brightly. The gems were all perfectly blended with each other. It was a spectacular sight I had never seen before. When I looked up, I noticed a high wall above the gems, which seemed to be made of a golden material. This wall gave me a strong sense of security, as if no evil force could penetrate this place. Here, the purest love pervaded everywhere. I found 3 doors in the wall, and they were far apart. I walked up to one of the doors. It felt like the door was made of pearls. It glowed softly, as if it were polished marble, and its beauty could not be described in words. Nothing on earth could compare to it. I looked down at the floor in front of the door, which looked like it was made of glass. This glass was so thick that I could not see through to its interior. I knew that this was my home. In this moment, I felt a strong sense of belonging. I knew that once I stepped through the door, I would return to my true home and be with those I loved. Standing in front of the gate, I knew that Jesus was on the other side of that door. Even though I could not see him or hear his voice, I could clearly feel his presence. This feeling filled my whole heart. My emotions became so mixed that I couldn't help but cry. Because I wasn't ready, I didn't want to leave my father and sister for a while. This thought made me feel sad and heartbroken. I understood that once I stepped through that door, I would not be able to return to my father. Suddenly, a dazzling angel appeared in front of me. Her presence gave me an overwhelming sense of peace. Her beauty could not be described in words. That angel gently told me that I could not stay here yet. She told me that now was not the time for me to leave, that I still had a mission to complete. With the angel's departure, I re-entered my body. At this moment, I was able to breathe normally again and my asthma symptoms were gone. This was another opportunity given to me by Jesus to continue my journey. There was a time when I would often have dreams about the end times. Most of them were very scary. I didn't understand at the time why they were being shown to me. When I was 31 years old, an unusual experience changed everything. I was lying in bed at the time. Suddenly, I felt a warm hand reach through my rib cage and into my chest. The touch was full of supernatural power. I could clearly feel the hand wrapping around my heart, as if giving it strength and warmth. In that moment, my heart began to slowly stop beating. Time seemed to freeze, and the sensations in my body gradually disappeared, while my consciousness became clearer and sharper. I knew that I was being taken out of my body and my soul was beginning to enter a whole new realm. The process was so swift and peaceful. I felt myself becoming lighter and no longer limited by the confines of my body. Everything around me became bright and clear. The next thing I knew, I found myself in my old home, which was a relatively remote rural area. I saw a sidewalk on a hill, a road I had never seen before. I also saw my father. He was dressed in plain clothes and walking slowly down the sidewalk. I hadn't seen him in a long time. After walking a short distance, he suddenly stopped, found a chair and sat down. Just then, there was a sudden loud boom. I turned to look at the sky and noticed that it was beginning to grow dim. Lightning cut through the darkness of the sky and illuminated the surroundings. The sound of thunder made me panic. The sky seemed to roar. Suddenly, a huge crack opened in the sky, like an unfolded scroll. The crack spread rapidly, expanding in every direction. At that opening, an intense bright light shone on the earth. As I stared at the light, I could see the figure of a man and knew exactly who it was. My attention turned back to my father, and I shouted to him, "Jesus is coming. Today is the day of judgment." However, no matter how hard I shouted, my voice seemed to be blown away by the wind and did not reach my father's ears. I watched my father sitting in a chair by the roadside, seemingly lost in his own thoughts, oblivious to all that was happening around him. My mood became restless, hoping to make him aware of the coming of Jesus and the approach of the day of judgment. In the midst of the chaotic scene, I saw many people running and hiding in fear, clutching various valuables in their hands. My eyes turned to the sky again, and I saw the souls of the dead, floating upward, drawn by some invisible force. Then, I was drawn by some invisible hand to ascend to the sky. In an instant, I was in the presence of Jesus. He was dressed in a dazzling white robe. His hair was dark brown. His presence was full of purity and power. As I gazed at Jesus, I noticed a distinct hole in the palm of his hand. The hole, as if it were an eternal mark. I also noticed Jesus' feet, one of which was partially exposed, while the other was hidden behind the robe. I knew that the hidden foot bore the same signs of trauma. To the left of Jesus stood a woman. I knew it was the Virgin Mary. She was dressed in a beautiful blue robe, with her long hair covered by a shawl. Around him, I saw others being brought in as well. Jesus could see into the heart of every person and examine their actions and thoughts. The scales of righteousness swung, weighing the goodness and sinfulness of each person. Some were brought to Jesus with faces full of repentance and humility. They confessed their faults and sought God's forgiveness and mercy. Their sins were forgiven, and they were led to the path of light. However, there were also those who were terrified. Remorse and regret filled their hearts. Their sins were revealed. They were condemned and faced eternal torment and separation. Here I also saw my deceased mother. She looked so beautiful and younger than she looked at the time of her death. I stood beside her and we gathered to sing. Suddenly, I felt a strong force push me away from my mother. I was pulled back into my body. The scene in front of me became instantly blurred and I realized I was returning to the real world. I opened my eyes and found myself lying in bed. My heartbeat gradually returned to normal. This Judgment Day scene seemed to be just a dream, but it brought me revelation and insight. I lay quietly in bed and recalled the good times I had with my mother. Even though I could no longer be with her in the real world, I knew that on another level, our connection still existed. This experience has given me a deeper understanding of life and death. It reminded me to cherish the family around me. It also inspired me to pursue goodness and justice, and that we will be judged by God. Judgment Day is real. Now, I am more determined to walk the path of life. Whether I face challenges or enjoy joys, I will always remember the scenes of Judgment Day as guidance and motivation. I will pursue the true meaning of life in a more meaningful way and strive to become a good person. I stood up and walked to the window. The sunlight sprinkled on my face. Warm and bright, as if it was God's favor and blessing.